I have been working as a truck driver for different companies for about 10 years. 3 years ago, I was employed by a warehouse company in Kansas handling deliveries. Most of the time, I drove a semi-truck, which is exactly what I was driving on February 2nd. It was a cold Monday, and since it was the beginning of the week, there were a lot of loads that needed to go out. I was trying to get everything done as quickly as possible. I started driving around 3 in the afternoon and planned to reach my destination that same night. I really did not want to pull over somewhere on the roadside just to sleep. After midnight, I was going about 5 miles over the speed limit, which is pretty fast for a semi. I was starting to feel extremely tired, but my destination was less than an hour away, so I convinced myself I could push through. My eyes felt dry, and it was becoming difficult just to keep them open. I splashed some water onto my hand and rubbed it across my face, which helped a little to wake me up. At that hour, my truck was the only vehicle on the road, so aside from my headlights, everything around me was pitch black. I remember reaching for my water bottle to take a sip when I nearly spit it out, after seeing a figure moving quickly in the distance ahead of me. I slammed on the brakes, and as the truck slowed almost to a stop, I could make out more details of the person standing nearly in the middle of the road. He appeared to be dressed entirely in black, with what looked like a dark scarf wrapped around his neck, and his neck seemed unnaturally long. I know that sounds like a strange detail to notice, but it looked unsettling in a way I cannot fully explain. His face, however, was completely blurred. I could not make out a single feature. As my truck continued to slow and got closer to him, I was about to roll down my window to ask if he needed help, but instead, he suddenly turned to his left and ran straight into the woods. I did not stop to think about it. I pressed the gas pedal and kept driving. No matter how creepy it felt, I was in a hurry to finish my run. It was not until about 20 seconds later that my heart really started pounding as I processed how strange the encounter had been. About 5 minutes passed before I managed to calm down, but then something else happened. As I was back up to my normal cruising speed, I saw something dash across the road right in front of me. At first, it looked like a large animal, but as it reached the woods on the other side, I realized it looked more like another person. This time, I did not even touch the brakes. I just kept going. I continued speeding down the road, maybe even pushing the gas a bit more, because I was starting to feel genuinely scared and just wanted to reach my destination as fast as possible. A few more minutes passed without anything happening, but I was becoming more exhausted by the second. At times, I even caught myself drifting slightly into the other lane. I still had about 40 minutes left in the drive, and I honestly did not know if I could make it. I started scanning the road for a safe place to pull over and park for the night. Eventually, I spotted a small gravel opening on the side of the road. It looked like it was meant to be a simple pull-off spot, maybe a tiny rest area of sorts. I guided the semi into it, parked, leaned back in my seat, and closed my eyes. I could not have been asleep for more than an hour when I suddenly woke up to complete darkness. I still have no idea what woke me, but as I stared out through the windshield, something deep in my gut told me to turn on the headlights. I reached for the knob, and the lights flooded the area in front of my truck. That was when I saw it. There was someone standing directly in front of the truck. It was the same man with the black scarf I had seen earlier on the road. This time, I could see his face much more clearly. He was wearing an unnaturally wide smile, and his eyes were stretched open as far as they could go. He was staring straight at me through the windshield. I immediately started the truck and pulled out of that clearing as fast as I could. My mind was racing. I could not understand how he could have possibly traveled 10 miles from the last place I had seen him. I did not stop again for the rest of the night until I finally reached my destination. Once there, I parked in the lot, fell asleep almost instantly, and woke up early the next morning. The only explanation I could come up with was that my exhaustion had caused my mind to play tricks on me after seeing strange things all night. Still, I have never heard of hallucinations being that clear and horrifying. That is the part that continues to confuse me and genuinely scare me to this day. Before I landed an office job in the city, I worked as a UPS driver for about 2 years. The pay was solid, and for the most part, I actually enjoyed the work. That said, there were definitely some uncomfortable moments. This happened back in 2010, about 2 years after I had graduated from college. At the time, I was working the 11 to 7 shift on a Thursday. It was the middle of winter, so it was already dark by around 5 in the evening. I was not exactly working in a nice vacation town either. I was based in a small town in North Carolina. I would not go as far as calling it slummy, but it was not a pleasant area by any means. I delivered packages in that same town pretty often. The layout of the housing there was strange. Some blocks had a handful of houses and trailer homes spread far apart, while other streets were completely empty. Because everything was so spread out, there were fewer deliveries overall, but each one took longer than it would in a typical suburban or city neighborhood. All of the deliveries were marked on a map, so I could plan a more efficient route instead of driving around aimlessly. After several hours of deliveries across at least 3 different small towns, I found myself driving down one of the streets I had just described. On one side of the road were scattered trailer homes and small houses, and on the other side was dense forest. It was a little after 6 in the evening, and my shift was almost over with only a few stops left. There was just one house on that block, and the package required a signature, which meant I could not simply leave it at the door. I pulled the truck up in front of the place, went to the back, and grabbed one of the largest and heaviest boxes I had handled all day. Inside, I could hear lots of small metal pieces rattling around. There were so many of them that I could not even begin to guess what the package contained. My only job was to carry the box up to the front door of the trailer home, so that is exactly what I did. There was no doorbell, so I had to knock. I noticed there were no lights on inside, and there was no car parked out front, so I was hoping someone was actually home. I knocked a few more times. Eventually, I saw a curtain move in one of the windows and heard footsteps approaching the door. Then there was a long pause, an uncomfortably long and suspicious pause, before the door finally opened a crack. An older woman slowly stuck her head out, looking extremely paranoid. When I told her I had a package that needed to be signed for, she opened the door all the way. She appeared nervous and restless while I asked her to sign the scanner. She signed it, and the signature was messy and rushed. She then told me that I would need to help her bring the box into her room. I had already expected that. The second I stepped inside the trailer home, I was hit with a strong, unpleasant smell. Every house has its own distinct scent, whether it is good or bad. This one was terrible. I could not even identify what it was. She guided me toward the back area past the small living room. We went down a narrow hallway where it was difficult to carry the box, and then she stopped at a door. She opened it and told me to place the box into the closet at the back of the room. I asked her to turn on the light. She told me the light did not work. The room was almost completely dark, with the only light coming from a lamp in the living room that barely reached down the hallway into the room. I could see just enough to move the box forward. As I got closer to the closet, I noticed someone standing in the corner inside it. I knew without a doubt that it was a person because of the clear outline of a body and a slight movement. There was no reasonable explanation for that. Whoever it was, they were clearly hiding and waiting. I set the box down where I stood, walked past the woman, and told her to have a nice day. She immediately started yelling at me to come back and help her, and then she began calling me a piece of shit. I had no idea what she and the person in the closet were planning, and I had no intention of staying to find out. I finished the rest of my route and went home that night, and that experience marked the beginning of my search for a newer and better job. I have been working as a truck driver since I was 25, and over the years, I have done a lot of night drives and, of course, experienced my fair share of strange situations. I delivered for a variety of different companies, often driving across state lines to drop off shipments at receiving companies or retail stores. One day, I had to drive all the way across California to deliver a trailer full of wooden furniture. Much of the route went through open desert roads. It was going to be a long drive, and since I had started the day late, I knew that most of my journey would be in the dark. Because these desert roads are so straight and traffic is usually light, it allowed me to push the truck a little faster than I would on other roads. That meant when I spotted the flashing tail lights of a car on the horizon, I had to brake harder than usual to bring the truck to a stop once I reached it. It turned out to be an old Chevy Impala parked on the side of the dirt road. The car had its hazards on. I got out of my truck because I wanted to check if anyone needed help. I walked over and tapped on the window, but there was no response. I bent down to look inside through the tinted glass. There was no one in the driver's seat, and I checked the other 3 seats as well. The car was completely empty. I then looked out into the dark desert road ahead, though I could only see about 20 yards in front of me. Feeling unusually helpful that night, I returned to my truck and grabbed a flashlight from the toolbox under the passenger seat. It was a heavy-duty tactical flashlight, the kind so bright it would hurt your eyes if you looked straight at it. When I turned it on, I saw what appeared to be an abandoned gas station on the side of the road. I must have missed it earlier, because the area around the pumps was mostly dirt, with no concrete at all. There were just 2 gas pumps, and behind them was a small building, likely a quick-stop store at one point. It seemed reasonable to assume that if anyone had been driving that car, they would be in that building. I approached the front door, which was permanently stuck open, and shone the flashlight inside. It lit up a good portion of the interior, which looked like a typical convenience store you would find at many gas stations, or at least it used to be. It was no surprise the place hadn't lasted long on a road like this. I called out to let anyone inside know I was there, and that I was offering help. The faint echo of my voice in the room sent chills down my spine for some reason. Then I heard something scrape across the floor on the opposite side of the room, behind a few shelves that probably once held snacks and drinks. I called out again, offering assistance if it was needed. That's when I heard a deep, heavy whisper respond. I immediately understood what was said, but I couldn't comprehend why anyone would say that. At the same time, I could hear heavy breathing coming from a corner of the room. That was more than enough to make me want to get the hell out of there as fast as possible. On my way back to the truck, I froze for at least 5 seconds, trying to process what I had just heard. I wasn't sure if any of it was real. It's hard to explain, but my mind was racing. I ran back to my truck and called 911 because I was too scared to return to the building. They asked for my exact location, but I couldn't provide it. All I could say was that I was by an abandoned gas station somewhere along a desert road. They asked me to stay on the line to give more details, but then suddenly the car parked in front of me started up and sped down the desert road. I didn't even see anyone get into it. It was so dark, and I was too focused on the call. I ran back toward the building to see if anyone was still inside, keeping 911 on the line the whole time. I moved toward the back of the building, where I had heard the voice and breathing. To my horror, there was a fresh pool of blood on the floor. I could only imagine what had happened. I told the operator that I believed I had stumbled onto a crime scene. Eventually, the state police were able to send several troopers to investigate. They asked for any information I could provide: a license plate number, a description of the suspect, and what I thought had occurred. All I could say was that it was a black Chevy Impala from the early 2000s, and that I had heard a man tell me to leave before a woman screamed as they left the building. There was no body, but I had my suspicions about what might have happened. I'm sure the troopers collected blood samples and carried out an investigation, but I wasn't able to help much beyond what I had seen. At the time, I didn't have a dash cam to capture the license plate, but I made sure to install one in my truck the very next week. This was one of those rare, once-in-a-lifetime experiences that will stay with me and continue to haunt me.